here to West Terrace Cemetery. It will be a historic day with the exhumation of the Somerton Man, a mystery in South Australia for over 70 years. My role is very simple: to approve the exhumation, set the conditions, and of course ensure compliance with the reinterment and respectful management of this operation. I wish to publicly acknowledge the South Australian Police for their commitment and financial contribution to meet the cost of this significant project, and also to the Forensic South Australia. This division will be responsible for the receiving of the body and obviously the significant forensic work to be undertaken and assessments to be done in consultation with the police. I think both of these agencies, they have the terms and conditions. I'm of course very pleased that that's being undertaken, and hopefully we will have some conclusion to this matter after 70 years. It's important to the public. It's been of academic interest, it's been studied, it's been investigated, and we hope with this opportunity there will be some resolution. If there are family out there that can be found, then of course that will be further bonus in this investigation. So with that, I'm going to invite the police to come forward and make their statement. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's been 72 years and we haven't yet been able to identify the person who's come to be known as the Somerton Man. I think at the outset it's important for everybody to remember the Somerton Man's not just a curiosity or a mystery to be solved. It's somebody's father, son, perhaps grandfather, uncle, brother, and that's why we're doing this and trying to identify him. There are people we know that live in Adelaide who believe they may be related, and they deserve to have a definitive answer as to whether they are descendant of the Somerton Man or not. And we would hope from this exercise to gather information which will be able to aid the investigators and point them in the direction of inquiries that might help to identify him, his origins, and maybe how he died. Today what will happen is the exhumation will be conducted in accordance with the terms and conditions as outlined by the attorney, but importantly it'll be conducted in a manner which pays respect and dignity to this man on behalf of whoever his family may be. What will happen today is the cemetery's people have commenced the excavation and have taken it to a point where we are near the remains of the Somerton Man, and shortly forensic teams will move into place a marquee over the grave site, and then they will work in private to recover his remains, which will be later conveyed to forensic science. Identifying the Somerton Man forms part of Operation Persevere, which is an operation being conducted by the Major Crime Investigation Branch in partnership with Forensic Science SA to identify 19 sets of unidentified human remains which exist in our state and which have gathered over the years, and we'll be doing our best to identify all of those as we move forward in the coming years. I'm happy to take some questions.
How likely do you think we are of finding this man's identity?
The challenge for us is, because it's such a long time ago, is to obtain DNA, and we need to be realistic. It is a possibility we might not. Even if we do obtain a sample, whether we get a result will be determined by the amount of DNA and the quality of DNA, and we'll work with Forensic Science Centre and do what we would do with any other unexplained death, and that is in the coming days, once we know the condition of the Somerton Man, we'll have a forensic case meeting with the relevant experts, and that will determine the forensic strategy for how his remains are dealt with.
Why do you think it is that this case has just captured the minds of the public over this long span of time?
I think everybody, when anybody dies in our state, everybody wants to have an understanding of why they die, I think the fact that people can relate, if it was their father, brother, uncle, they would want to know what's happened to them. There was all those earlier talk about whether he was a Russian spy, whether he's involved in the black market, whether he was a sailor. There's just been lots of theories over time that he was a military person, and the truth of it is nobody knows. There's some interesting things with the case. You know, earlier on the day he'd arrived at the railway station, he'd checked in his luggage there, he caught the train down to the bay. At some point he went and bought a pasty, a pretty normal activity, and he had a phone number of a person who lived at Glenelg, a woman, and who he's believed to have made contact with. He was a man similar to him was seen at that house. That person denies any knowledge of him or knowing the man. And there's lots of other bits and pieces that make it a really interesting case.
It's a different one for you, Des. You wouldn't have come across this type of investigation before.
No, this is just
Everybody's wanted an answer as to what it is, and there's all these theories. So it's a little bit different to the normal work we do, in that there's a lot more mystery and probably public interest in this. But as I say, we also have other sets of human remains that are equally as important. It's not so much about us, it's about doing the right thing. As I say, this is somebody's family member. I mean, somewhere there is somebody who's missing this person. I mean, this will hopefully help us identify the origins of that person and help us solve this mystery. Well, I might involve Anne to talk about you know, the advances and potential that creates, but certainly people did their best in the past. Everybody did everything they could to solve the case, and haven't been able to, but now I think the time is right.
I think over the years there's been huge advances in DNA technology, and now there are a lot of different techniques that we're going to be able to potentially use to assist in trying to finally give this gentleman a name. We may or may not be successful in that. There's a number of steps to cover. First of all, we need to extract the DNA if it's present, and then apply it to the techniques which apply it to the different databases or the different types of methods that are available for us to see if we can find any information to assist with that.
Sorry.
Have you had a case like this before?
Personally, I haven't, but we have been involved with many cases with South Australian Police in assisting in the identification of individuals, and also with the coroner. We haven't had a case where we've had to consider, or we are considering, as many different types of DNA techniques that are available.
The period of time, is that a concern in terms of your probability of success?
With older remains, there is obviously, we need to look at the condition of the remains and whether there is DNA present. The fact that the remains have also been embalmed adds another complication, and that's because the embalming fluid or the chemical that's used can break down the DNA as well. The length of time that it may take is a little bit difficult to predict until we've actually seen the condition of the remains themselves. We will then need to determine what's the best way to extract any potential DNA, and once we've done that, make sure that the condition of the DNA or the profile and the amount of DNA that we can extract is going to be sufficient for the techniques we would like to consider. So at this stage it's a little bit difficult to actually put a time frame on it. Our focus is going to be on making sure we extract, or have the best possible chance of extracting the correct DNA profile. And obviously we will do it as quickly as possible, but at the same time treating the individual with a dignity and respect. Some of the techniques, particularly in the advanced DNA area that we're looking at, we will have to use experts from within Australia. It's not something that we would do on a routine basis or have the expertise for at Forensic Science SA. So we will facilitate the taking of those samples for those particular techniques if they're considered suitable.
So the lengthy process is that hard. Once you possibly get a DNA, that would be very quick in terms of possibly.
Not necessarily. Even if we do actually find DNA present, we may not actually find a match. It will depend on who's on the databases that we're looking at and what information can be extracted from the comparison that's made. A range of experts at Forensic Science SA that will be involved in this. We'll have DNA specialists, we've got an anthropologist that is assisting today and also in the recording and visual examination of the remains and taking some of those samples, and a pathologist will also be involved in that particular area as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you.